On the edge of a quiet country road leading into a small American town, there stood a wooden flower stand, old and sun-bleached, its paint chipped by years of rain and wind. Every morning before the first light of dawn, a woman named Grace would push her faded blue cart from a nearby trailer, her body frail but her step steady. Her hair, silver and soft, was always tied in a bun beneath her straw hat. She arranged her flowers, roses, daisies, lily, and wild sunflowers into mason jars filled with clean water from the well behind her home. Each jar was tied with a simple ribbon, sometimes blue, sometimes yellow, colors that seemed to carry sunlight even on cloudy mornings. She sold them for almost nothing, sometimes giving them away, saying they were blessings meant to be shared. She had been there for years, rain or shine, sitting quietly on a small stool beside her stand, humming hymns and greeting strangers with a gentle smile. People in town called her the Flower Lady. Few knew her name, and even fewer knew her story. She lived alone in a tiny trailer behind the church. Her husband had died decades ago, and her only son, Michael, had gone missing in the military. The years had weathered her, but her faith had not broken. Every night she prayed for the world, for strangers, for lost souls she would never meet. She had little, but she gave much. Her kindness was quiet, like a candle flickering unseen in the dark. One late autumn morning, when the sky was gray and the air smelled of rain, she was arranging a new set of flowers, white daisies for hope, red roses for love, and lavender for peace, when she noticed a young man sitting in an old car parked across the road. The engine was off. The man's head rested on the steering wheel. He looked weary, hollow, and broken. Grace watched for a moment, her hands stilling. Something in his posture spoke to her heart. A deep loneliness she recognized. She whispered a small prayer under her breath. "Lord, send him peace," then went back to her flowers. A few minutes later, the young man stepped out of the car. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept in days. He crossed the road and stopped in front of her stand. For a long moment, he said nothing. Grace smiled softly, breaking the silence. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm. "Would you like some flowers, son?" The man shook his head. "No, ma'am," he murmured. "I don't think anyone would want them from me." His name was Ethan. He had just left a rehab center, carrying with him the weight of shame, guilt, and loss. His parents no longer answered his calls. His friends had disappeared, and he felt like the world had no place left for him. He had driven aimlessly, unsure whether he wanted to live or not. But something he didn't know what had made him stop at the sight of her stand. Grace tilted her head. "Flowers are not just for giving," she said gently. "Sometimes they're for remembering. Maybe you need to remember something beautiful." Ethan looked away. "Beautiful things don't last," he whispered. Grace smiled faintly. "That's why we make more of them." She reached for a small bouquet of white daisies and held them out. "Here, these are for you." He stepped back. "I don't have money." She shook her head. "Did I ask for any?" "Take them, child. They're paid for already by Grace." He hesitated, then slowly took the flowers. His fingers brushed hers, and something like warmth flickered through him. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you give them to me?" Grace looked up at the sky. "Because God gives me breath every morning, even when I don't deserve it. I just pass it on." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to say thank you, but couldn't. Instead, he walked back to his car, clutching the flowers like a lifeline. He placed them on the seat beside him and wept for the first time in years. Something inside him, something long dead, began to stir. That night, he drove until he found a church. He sat in the last pew and whispered a prayer, awkward and broken, but real. Days turned to months, months to years. Ethan rebuilt his life slowly. He found work, joined a community, and eventually helped others battling addiction. He told no one about the flower lady, but he thought of her often, especially when he saw daisies growing in unexpected places. One spring morning nearly a decade later, Grace was still there, though older now, her hands frailer, her steps slower. Her little stand leaned slightly, the wood worn, the sign faded. But her eyes still sparkled. She was tying ribbons when she heard a car pull over. She looked up to see a tall man in a fine suit step out, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. He smiled warmly and said, "You probably don't remember me." She squinted. "Should I?" The man laughed softly, his voice deep but familiar. "Maybe not. It's been a long time. You gave me flowers once when I had nothing. You told me God still loved me." Grace's eyes widened, and then her lips trembled. "Ethan," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You made it." He nodded, voice breaking. "I did, ma'am. I got clean. I found God. I started a small company helping people who've been where I was. I came to thank you." Grace smiled through her tears. "Oh, my dear, you don't owe me thanks. I just gave you what God gave me." Ethan stepped forward and handed her the bouquet. "Then let me give this back in His name." They stood there quietly as the morning breeze carried the scent of flowers across the road. Ethan stayed with her that day, helping arrange jars, painting the sign, fixing the broken stool. Before he left, he handed her an envelope. "This is for you," he said. "To fix the stand, or maybe just to make life a little easier." She opened it later and found a check far beyond anything she had ever imagined, enough to rebuild the stand completely. She named it Grace's Flowers of Hope, and beside the new sign, she added a small note. "Each bloom is a reminder you are not forgotten." From then on, her little flower stand became more than a place to buy flowers. People came for prayer, for peace, for comfort. Grace listened to stories of sorrow, held hands with strangers, and told them the same simple truth: God is still working, even when you can't see it. Her flowers became symbols of renewal, spreading light to hearts that had almost gone dark. Years later, when she passed away peacefully in her sleep, the whole town gathered for her funeral. The church was filled with flowers, roses, daisies, lily, and wild sunflowers, brought by those she had touched. Ethan, now a father, stood by her casket holding a single white daisy. As tears rolled down his face, he whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me meet one of your angels." He later rebuilt her stand again, this time as a community project. The new sign read, "Grace's Flowers of Hope, take one, give one, believe again." Travelers stopped to pick flowers, and many left donations or prayers. Every jar carried a small tag that read, "You are loved. God is not done with you." Even long after her passing, Grace's kindness continued to ripple across lives she would never know. Children grew up hearing the story of the flower lady by the road, the one who gave hope to a lost man who became a beacon for others. Sometimes, Ethan would drive past the stand with his daughter. She would point and ask, "Daddy, who was she?" And he would smile, eyes glistening. "She was someone who showed me what God's love looks like." The child would stare at the bright flowers swaying in the breeze. And Ethan would think of that cold autumn morning when everything changed because of one small act of kindness. It had cost her nothing but faith, yet it gave him everything a life redeemed, a soul restored. Years rolled on, seasons turned, and though the world hurried past, the little stand remained. Flowers still bloomed there, tended by hands of those once broken but now whole. They carried Grace's legacy forward, not in monuments or fame, but in kindness repeated endlessly. And so, on that quiet roadside, where wildflowers kissed the wind and the memory of one humble woman lingered, hope kept growing, one jar at a time. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe. If this story touched your heart, Leave a comment below and share it with someone who might need hope today. Let's keep spreading the light, one act of kindness at a time. God bless you always.